Welcome back to the Story of Liberty. This is John Bona. The United States Capitol is the meeting place of Congress, the legislature of the federal government of America. Located in Washington, D.C., it sits atop Capitol Hill at the eastern end of the National Mall. Did you know that it's the number one most famous building in the world? Officially, both the east and west sides of the Capitol are referred to as fronts. Therefore, there is really no backside to the Capitol. Not long after the completion of both wings, the Capitol was partially burned by the British in August of 1814 during the War of 1812. Although the Capitol building still stands today, some of the most blatant lies spewed by those intent on destroying Christianity in public life argue that America was never a Christian nation, and that our founding fathers were either atheists or agnostics or deists. But the truth is that the enemies of Christianity cannot separate our country from its Christian foundations. And that's what I'd like to prove to you in the next few minutes. All you have to do is check out the Capitol building. Go there, take your family to Washington, and you will see the foundations of our nation are in fact Christian. Folks, as long as the beautiful U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. remains standing, you will see the beautiful paintings on the walls of the rotunda, to the many artifacts, statues, and furnishings in its halls and chambers. This magnificent edifice celebrates America and our nation's Christian heroes and our deep-rooted spiritual history. Before relocating to the Capitol in Washington, D.C., the government of the United States operated in New York City and then in Philadelphia. Upon moving into its permanent home in late November 1800, Congress spent the first weeks getting organized. Then it did something the enemies of Christianity would rather we not talk about here on the Story of Liberty. Congress decided and made it official. The Capitol building would be used for a church, for church services. It's in the congressional record of December 4th, 1800. Many people are probably surprised to learn that the United States Capitol, on a regular basis, served as a church building. The practice that began even before Congress officially moved into the building and lasted well until after the Civil War. The Capitol's use as a church by several prominent individuals throughout time who attended services there as well. It's interesting, Thomas Jefferson was one of them. His approval came while he was still officially the Vice President of the United States. But after he had just been elected president, he also approved of it and attended services in the Capitol. By the way, you could take a tour of Washington with any one of our great Christian American historians. Dr. Marshall Foster of the World History Institute, he can walk you through our great heritage as he brings our forefathers to life with stories. You could find Marshall at the worldhistoryinstitute.org. Or William Federer, Bill Federer, the author of America's God and Country, Encyclopedia of Quotations, and many other great books. You can receive Bill's email to the American Minute every day from Bill. It's just a great way to reflect daily on our Christian history. Bill could take you through Washington as well. And the remarkable historian David Barton of Wall Builders. David could take you on an amazing tour of Washington, or you could buy Wall Builders DVD and take a spiritual heritage tour. It takes you on an unforgettable tour of the institution that embodies so much of America's Christian heritage. In David's A Spiritual Heritage Tour of the United States Capitol, David Barton brings the Founding Fathers to life with experts from speeches and letters, photographs of original paintings, statues, and artifacts. Well, there's no doubt, just look at the oil paintings in the Capitol. It embodies America's great Christian heritage. Since 1824, the walls of the rotunda have been adorned with 8 massive oil paintings, 4 on the east side, 4 on the west, each depicting significant historical events. On the east side are paintings of 2 prayer sessions and a baptism. One is of Christopher Columbus landing in the West in 1492 and the prayer service held following his landing. Another is the baptism of Pocahontas in Virginia in 1613. You probably know Pocahontas was one of the America's first converts to Christianity. A third picture is of the Pilgrims in 1620, praying before departing Leyden, Holland, for America to escape the wrath of the ruthless King James, who was trying to either kill or imprison them all. Upon arriving, after 66 days across the ocean sea, and while still anchored offshore, the Pilgrims signed the Mayflower Compact, the birth certificate of America, the great freedom-loving document. The compact declared that the Pilgrims had come to the new land for the purpose of advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ. It also established governing principles based on God's Word, principles that years later would form the basis for our Declaration of Independence and Constitution. The 4 beautiful, huge paintings on the west side of the rotunda include the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. They were painted by Founding Father John Trumbull. Not only did John come from an outspoken Christian family, but the figures in his Capitol pictures were predominantly Christian, including the signers of the Declaration. Extensive research conducted recently into the lives of the 55 framers of the Constitution has concluded beyond a shadow of a doubt that 50 of them, at least 50 of them, possibly more, were unquestionably practicing Christians. One of them is Benjamin Rush. He started 5 colleges and universities. He was a medical educator and writer, and also Benjamin started America's first Bible Society. It was an act of Congress. He also produced the first stereotyped Bible. Among the many other Christian leaders commemorated in the hall stands Daniel Webster. The famous American politician and diplomat is considered one of the greatest orators in American history. He stated on December 2nd, 1820, "Finally, let us not forget the religious character of our origin. Our fathers were brought here with their high veneration for the Christian religion. They journeyed by its light, and they labored in its hope." Other paintings on the west side of the rotunda depict the British surrender at Yorktown in 1781 and George Washington resigning his commission in 1783. George Washington said, "You cannot rightly govern without God and the Bible." I wish our leaders today would take that advice. Although a peace treaty had not been signed, America was essentially free to establish its own laws following the surrender from the British. And since under British law it had been illegal to actually print a Bible in English, one of Congress's first acts was to approve in 1781 the printing of the first English language Bible in America. The Bible of the Revolution was published with an endorsement in the front of the Bible that said, "The United States in Congress recommend this edition of the Bible to the inhabitants of the United States of America." 3 other statues stand in the small house rotunda connecting the main rotunda and the old house chamber, including one of the Reverend John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg. He was a 30-year-old pastor. You remember John. He preached on Christian responsibility and to be engaged in many facets of American life to secure our liberty for America. In 1775, after preaching a message on Ecclesiastes 3:1, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven," John closed his message by saying, in the language of the Holy Writ, "There is a time for all things. There is a time to preach and a time to fight. And now is a time to fight." He then threw off his pastor's robe to reveal the uniform of an officer in the Revolutionary Army. That afternoon, John Muhlenberg marched off with 300 men to join General Washington's troops, where he served until the end of the war, and he was promoted to the rank of Major General, one of America's highest-ranking military officers. He is also seen in the rotunda picture of the British surrender. Pastor and Reverend John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg. In several of the chambers, you will see the words, "In God we trust." In one of the chambers, there are images of several great lawgivers spanning the centuries. But you will notice in the middle, in the place of honor, the only lawgiver that is accorded completely. His view overlooks the chamber, Moses, the great lawgiver of the Bible. We also see as we walk down the chamber, then the Speaker of the House was Robert Winthrop, a great statesman, a strong Christian, as evidenced by one of the phrases that rings out throughout the channels of time. He said, "All societies of men must be governed in some way or another. Men, in a word, must necessarily be controlled either by a power within them or by a power without them, either by the word of God or by the strong arm of man, either by the Bible or by the bayonet." The Congressional Prayer Chapel opened in 1954. I had the opportunity to visit the prayer chapel with the U.S. Senate chaplain, Barry Black, and my good friend Kurt Cameron just a little while ago. In that prayer chapel, you will see "Under God." It was added to the Pledge of Allegiance. It features a beautiful stained glass window showing George Washington kneeling in prayer. Above him is this declaration, "This nation under God." And surrounding him is the Bible verse from Psalm 16:1, "Preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust." When you walk into the old Supreme Court chamber, you see there's 4 pillars, and the busts of our first 4 Chief Justices are made right into them. It's really cool to look at. The first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, Founding Father John Jay, is there. He stated, "Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is our duty, as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation, to select and prefer Christians for their rulers." Did you hear that, folks? I hope you did. I hope you not only hear that, but you remember when you vote, that you will vote for Christians. These are just a few of the Christian paintings and beautiful statues found in the U.S. Capitol. To those who claim the framers built a wall of separation between church and state, you're simply wrong. See, Ronald Reagan said it. He said, if we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be one nation gone under. You know, it's no wonder why America has been the freest, most prosperous, richest nation in the history of the world. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Well, we know the liberals and the progressives, they have worked hard to undermine our true foundations. They have totally twisted and created bogus phrases, just like the wall of separation between church and state. This phrase was only used once in a letter. It's not in our Constitution. It was written in a letter by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Association in Connecticut. And it was written to calm any fears that they had that Congress was not going to choose any one Christian denomination to be the state denomination. In other words, they were not going to choose the Methodist to be the state denomination, or the Baptist, or the Presbyterian, or the Anglican. See, they were just calming their fears. This was Thomas Jefferson's personal letter reassuring the Baptists that the government hands were tied from interfering affairs or decisions of the churches in America. The letter did not state in any way, shape, or form that the government was to remove and separate God and the Christian religion from public life in America. Well, folks, visit the Capitol building when you get a chance. It is the most famous building in the world. And you know, as long as the beautiful U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. remains standing, you will see compelling evidence we were founded as a Christian nation. God bless you.